In your life, there are going to be seasons of consumption, like taking things in, absorbing things, educating yourself. And there are also going to be seasons of production where you're creating things, where you're putting your creative capacity, your ability to produce into effect. But if you get the two screwed up, either spending too much time in consumption or too much time in production, or not enough in either, you're going to be stuck. So before we dive into that, if you want to speak with old Uncle Yo, have a conversation, mano y mano, click the link down below, and we'll dig into your situation and come up with real solutions. But today we got a question from a bro who says, yo, Elliot, for the last few years, I've been obsessed with self-improvement. I've read all the books, I've watched countless YouTube videos, I've taken courses and listened to every podcast on mindset, business, and success. Great. But here's the problem. I'm still stuck. I keep telling myself I need to learn more about stuff before I take action, but deep down I know I'm just afraid of failing. I feel like God put something on the inside for me to create, but I don't know how to start. How do I break out of this cycle of consumption and finally step into what I'm meant to do? Great question, man. And you know, I couldn't help but to think about this quote from the Bible. I'm not going to get it right, so don't beat me up, but there's a point in the gospel where Jesus stumbles upon a tree, and this tree is not producing fruit. It's time for this tree to produce fruit, but it's not producing fruit, and so he curses the tree, and the tree dies. Like, the whole story doesn't even make any sense, right? Like, why is he bothering with a tree, and why would he curse something that is not producing fruit? Like, it's just a tree. And it makes me think about you, and it makes me think about me, and how we get these seasons a little screwed up, where we've got everything that we need, right? Like, imagine that tree. It's got all the sun it needs, it's got all the water it needs, it got all the nutrients in the soil in order to produce something, but yet it's not producing. It's like God is saying, here, dude, here's everything you need. Give me something, create something. It's also like the parable of the talents. I think about that one also. And I don't know what the hell a talent is in the Bible, but talent in your life is like God giving you shit that you can do something with, right? So the parable of the talents, that's another one where Jesus tells a story about a guy that has a lot of money, and he gives some of these talents to three different guys. And one of the guys, he's got a lot of the talent, and he goes and creates shit, and one of the guys, he doesn't have much talent, but then he hides it. Once again, it's God saying, here's everything you need, buddy. Go and make a great life. Glorify me through your life. Be a gift to the world. And you don't do anything. You produce no fruit. So curses upon you, right? Kind of harsh, kind of tough, right? Weird sayings from Christ. But it really relates to our life. And I think if we take a step back and we think about the two seasons, like, I'm being sort of broad here, but there really are two seasons, right? Like, there's hot and there's cold. There's summer and there's winter. And you think about the contrast between the two, and if one exists without the other, we're going to be in imbalance. Summertime is a time of production. Wintertime is a time of consumption. If all we do is have winter time, we're going to be cold, we're going to be desolate, we're going to be unfucking fruitful. But if all we have is summertime, we're gonna burn ourselves out, right? Like, imagine the sun's hot all the time. The production is not going to be there because the plant is going to be scorched. It's just too much. Cooked, fried, burnt up. On the other side, half baked, right? And so you and your situation right now have been living in a season of winter, meaning nothing's coming out of you. You're like that tree that's not producing, but yet there's a lot of nourishing going on, right? Like, during the winter, the energy of nature sinks in. It goes in. It's receptive, right? It's in a receiving mode, a nourishing mode, a deep down underneath growing mode, right? Like an unconscious or below the surface sort of growth. When you're reading a lot of books, you're consuming a lot of YouTube videos, you're taking courses and stuff like that, it's like that's what's happening to you. You're absorbing, you're taking things in, you're allowing these ideas to marinate and to come together and create combinations within you so that you could create. But there's a lot of problems in this world today, like when it comes to the imbalance in the amount of consumption that we have available to us and the impetus to create. And so I can't blame you. I keep thinking about how I grew up in the 1980s, where like I had literally 5 channels on my TV. We had 5 channels on our TV and there was no internet. The telephone was plugged into the wall. So we weren't constantly walking around plugged in, listening to things. We weren't reading books, watching videos. There was no such thing as fucking podcasts in the 1980s. And me and my brothers, my siblings, my friends, we were highly creative. I remember creating forts. I don't even know if kids do this anymore. I remember creating forts. I remember creating all kinds of like art. We would like create art in the dirt, just like a weird thing that we did. And I thought it was so fucking fun, like just taking my finger and or some sticks and creating just drawings in the dirt, right? Like we had toys, but we also had time. We also had space. We also had the ability and the impetus to create. I think it had a lot to do with boredom, right? Like when you let yourself sit and absorb boredom, you then have now the time to ruminate and to create. Where today there's never an opportunity to be bored. You can never be bored. You should today, because there's so much. No, the word boredom doesn't even exist anymore for most kids, because all they got to do is put them in front of the screen and they're just absorbing passively. And you know, we like to, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, and a lot of like the boomers, they'll like to say that this generation is lazy, but I'm not so sure that y'all are just lazy. You just don't know how to create because you live in a world that has an imbalance in terms of too much consumption. Consumers, we're all consumers. So what do? How do you create? Man, it's tricky also because the more you consume, the more you imitate. The more you consume, the more you look at other people, the more you get ideas from the outside. You don't have enough time and space to create on the inside. A lot of what we create in this world is so ugly because it's just a regurgitation of what we consume. Most so-called producers, most creators aren't actually creators at all. We're more of reproducers. We're more like regurgitators. Just look on YouTube. Most stuff that you see on YouTube is a rehash of another YouTube video or something that somebody else heard. And it's so funny because like, you know that these ideas are half baked because they come in and they almost sound exactly like they do on the way out. There's no wisdom, there's no integration. There's no real absorption and like growth, like spontaneous creation. It literally is like garbage in, garbage out, right? And I'm not saying that the stuff is all garbage, but it's just like shit goes in, shit goes out, right? And the guy who takes in and spits out faster than the other seems to be the one that wins, but there really, once again, is no creativity. There's no creativity involved with that. It's just rote. And that's how we were taught to learn in school. We were taught in school that you gotta just pass the test by giving the teacher back what the teacher gave you. Where do we get to create, right? Are we actually creators? That's another thing I want to, you know, I'm kind of like going off on many different tangents here, different branches here, but like, just because somebody is making a lot of shit doesn't even actually mean that the shit that they're creating is good or that it's unique or really theirs at all. It doesn't come from the void, from the emptiness, from the boredom that's associated with like taking things in and then just going in being for a little while. And so like even the angst to create, right? I know I may not be making sense because I'm talking a lot about a lot of different things, but this is it's a complex, nuanced topic. Like even the angst to create, the desire to create, this is the other side of the puzzle, right? Like, so you are taking a lot of stuff in, but you're not producing anything. You got guys that are a lot like me, ADHD, who we're so quick to want to produce something. We're so quick to take action. We're so quick to make stuff that there really was no time for the intuition to be involved. It's just pure will, it's pure grind, it's pure just mindless production. And you end up creating a lot of junk. You end up creating a lot of things that don't work. So how do you balance the two, man? How do you balance the two? The key is that in between, it's that boredom that I was talking about in the beginning, or when I was talking about me as a kid. Like, we need to consume, yes, and there's a season to consume, yes. And consumption oftentimes, most of the times, is stuff from the outside. But then there needs to be a moment, there needs to be a season of alchemy. There needs to be taking stuff in, but then just pausing, allowing yourself to be bored, allowing the ingredients to sort of work together and blend together, like like when you're making sourdough bread, right? I don't know where the hell I'm coming up with this, but like you can put all the ingredients together, but you have to let it sit so that like the bacteria creates the probiotics in it, right? Like it's got to sit. Like they make sauerkraut this way. Like a lot of foods that are high in probiotics, bacterias, they require time. Like you got to let it sit, right? What is it that they put in the bread that causes it to rise? Like it takes time for that stuff. Leaven, right? It takes time. You got to let it sit. And then it's mature. You put it in the oven, and now you got bread. Now you got something that tastes good. So consume, my man. Keep doing what you're doing, but stop consuming. Not to just hurry into production, but to allow the consumption to be digested. Allow your body to digest and break down and assimilate and utilize the things that you're learning by being quiet, by being still for a moment, allowing the bread to rise. And then by and by, you're going to get a spark. I think that's a part of the problem that you're having right now. You're not giving yourself the time to have the spark. Consume, stop, wait for the spark, and then the creation will be spontaneous. I was talking about a video last week. I made a video talking to you guys about how like I was stuck in my business because I was so busy creating. And then I took time. I stopped. And in that stopping, the spark came. The spark can't come. The spark can only come if there's stillness. There has to be wood to catch fire, right? That's your information. But there has to be, like right now it's windy, and you might hear the wind. There has to be stillness. Like if the wind is coming, if there's too much activity and you light a spark, you try to make a fire with a fire starter, the wind will keep blowing it out. You gotta wait till the wind settles down, right? That's all the extra thoughts. That is all the noise from the outside. That's the overconsumption, wind blowing your spark. Once that wind settles down and you like that spark, you'll create a fire, a bonfire of creative, beautiful art, dude. Hope that helps. Done.